Cool.
So
Welcome everyone to
Wrong camera.
The B Word, featuring boys to men.
We invited young South African men to share their understanding of what it truly means to be a man in this day and age, deconstructing masculinity and manhood through honest conversation, face to face, man to man.
Okay. What does being a man mean to you?
Being a man has always kind of like been a challenge.
How so?
Being a man ultimately has, especially in my upbringing and with regards to my own father and father figure in the household, which is not like the typical male figure in the house. It's always been like the introverse of like the social script of being a man.
Right.
Because my mother's always been the breadwinner in the household. And because of that attitude and also the way that my mother is, my father's been more the emotion supportive figure.
Right.
So being a provider as a man and sort of a protectorate has always been like my vision of being a man and what it means to be a man. It's not necessarily to be the breadwinner in terms of like, or being a provider in terms of financial gains.
Right.
Or being the protector over somebody, but with someone. And that's what it means to be a man to me.
Alright.
Cool.
So for me it's a little bit different because I was raised by a single mother for most of my life, especially like the core development period of my life. So like from before puberty till like now. So a lot of like I can't pretend that society doesn't have like expectations of men and sort of roles of manhood that have been taught to me. But at the same time, a lot of my character and whatever I don't attribute to my manhood because I haven't really been taught those manly values or whatever by a man. Like, you know, son, this is what a man does or whatever. It's just sort of like, this is what you do. Nor has my mom been like, you know, this is what a man does. Or it's always just been like, this is what you do as a person, as someone like within a society. So I feel those same values of like being protective, or for me a big thing is, you know, being responsible and being a leader within my community.
Yes.
So taking care of others, creating opportunities, you know, being involved in other people's lives. I feel like that is something that is associated with men because leadership is associated with men and all these things. But at the same time, it's just sort of who I am.
Yeah.
So it's gendered, but also not.
Yeah. And as we discussed earlier as well, and I remember our earlier conversation, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a man's role.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's very unique. Yeah. Shen, how do you think society defines men, and what are some of the expectations from them?
So we actually had a really deep chat about this a while ago because I had like a whole identity crisis. I had a really bad experience at Opikopi Festival this year where I sort of had a moment with my manhood and whatever that was incredibly uncomfortable. But we know like all the general expectations of men, of like to be strong, to be successful, to be alpha and all that stuff, right? And you sort of reject it as you become woke, or you sort of enter circles and spaces with people that allow you to be more self-defined than societally defined.
Those safe spaces where you can actually find yourself.
But what I noted in this experience in which I was seeing Questa perform, and the crowd was full of many men and some girls and some women, rather. But I sort of noted that like the way men sort of function in the world is that we see women as like extensions of ourselves, and we see that both in the positive and the negative. So in the positive sense that like if you are a guy within a group of friends and there are girls in that group, that these are your girls, and like if another guy is to look at the group and you are to look at them, he won't bother your girls because of your presence there, even though you don't treat those women like they belong to you. Exactly, right? And at the same time, in the other version, when you are a guy who wants to approach a woman, if there is a man there or a boyfriend or whatever, then you respect that. So like her actual agency and whatever is not super relevant. You sort of process first through whether there is a male figure there, and then that decides your actions, which is why frequently a rejection tool, as you were saying, is like
Yes.
a woman will say that I have a boyfriend, and that's a deterrent rather than I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But I'm poly, so that's fine.
But I totally understand what you're saying. I remember also earlier expanding on that and saying that it's not only just like in that aspect, it's not only just in the sexual aspect to say, oh, okay, I know, now I'll back off because you have a boyfriend.
Right.
But it's also even identifies, and it's not only with men, but it's also identifies among other women, where they say, for instance, oh, I know her, she's ex's boyfriend.
Right.
And they even say, you say that person's contact in your phone as like, Y ex's boyfriend.
Yeah.
And it's so many people I find like that. And it's so interesting that so many people then make that their identifier in the society and their space.
Right.
And it's like, that's the expectation of a woman, is to kind of like, oh, I belong to, and a man has to be like, oh yeah, she's mine.
Right.
And that possessiveness, which we totally reject.
Which sucks.
Yeah, even though it's a real thing.
It's a thing, though. Exactly. Yeah. So moving on, what are some of the unwritten rules of masculinity?
Ooh.
And what is the thing that, we sort of just covered that you and most men around you subconsciously follow?
Yeah, we did. I think it's more rather how we treat other women and other people in their space, and there's unwritten rules. It's like, I have to be a man, I have to be alpha, in the sense that like the dominant person in the room, because you know, all men are just competing with each other secretly. And it's actually, it's a really weird social dynamic because, and if I may expand your Obi story as well, because we digested that quite well, is to say that when you enter a room, typically there's a male interaction that happens. It's very like subtle, you're not always aware of it, but when you do become aware of it, it's kind of frightening how automatically it happens.
Right.
That thing just takes over, but you're either like alpha or you submit. It's the same thing you see in like animal fights, because they'll challenge the alpha, and then if they lose, the alpha's like, okay, go away. Whereas in the female sense, like they often fight to the death, but males is all for the dominance. And you walk into a room as a male, and you instantly, it's like all of this, it's a typical dick measuring competition, and everyone's kind of like, hey, what's up, I'm the big guy. And it's a little competition, it's like little gestures, a little bit of banter, but it's got like a thing behind it.
Establishing yourself in the social hierarchy.
Yeah. And then it's the same thing, especially like you mentioned earlier, if there's women in the room, then it's a completely different space. Because then it's even more competitive, but rather like who can get the best attention out of that. Yeah. And that's like an unwritten rule, but it's like very there. It's not even a rule, it's sort of like just a foreplay of animal tendency, like base tendency between men.
Yeah, I'm noticing like a theme in which, like, back to the first question, where like essentially what is defining a man is just like your ability to control power in the space. Yeah. And often that is through women, and oftentimes that's just through like what is valued these days, whether it's financials or like gains or whatever. Yeah. It's just about like
something
power you can control, and if you don't have that, then like your manhood comes into question.
So it has to, and it's weird because it has to be sort of a physical attribute.
Yeah.
You know, something that you can actually.
You have to express it, right?
Yeah, it has to be seen. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. Okay. One quick deep breath.
Yeah. No fan on.
This one's at least chill. When was the last time you cried?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah. So the last time I cried, or the last like memorable time I cried. I don't know if I've cried since then, if like it was a sad song or because I often cry in movies, like animation
all the time.
Anything
adverts.
Anything charging. It's like
you got me there.
I'm not even ashamed, but and again, like filling into that role of like, we do know this, but specifically with my relationship history, is that the last time I remember, it was super late at night. I was so tired, and I remember emotionally opening up a vulnerability towards a partner at the time.
Right.
And I was very afraid to do that. I was very afraid to open up that emotional vulnerability, because it lets people in, and it also lets people see that weaker side of you, and to know that like you are human, and to like know what your faults and what you are afraid of. And the worst thing is like you're afraid of doing it because then it could actualize that. And I remember like it was specifically to do with an insecurity revolving around like not being wanted for who I am, but rather what I portray myself as.
Right.
And I just remember like bursting out in tears and like being held in arms, which was fantastic. It was the best experience. So nice to open up. But that was the last time like I emotionally cried and like felt like release. And yourself?
Yeah, I'd like to definitely reiterate that.
Yeah.
Like, crying all the time is very normal.
Yeah.
And I do cry all the time. All sorts of emotional, triggering
Yeah.
things. Yeah, media and content, whatever. And it's totally fine for guys to cry, guys. just let it out. You know? But emotionally, like to think about like when it's draining you so much, it has been a while, you know. I am very good at like processing my emotions and introspecting and healthily sort of arriving at a point so that like I'm not crying because I'm overwhelmed and it's too much, and it's just like I usually attend to it before then. So I can't really think, like yesterday I felt awful because I hadn't slept and I was super hungry, and I'm just like putting a lot of pressure on myself to like put my art right now, and
we've had that conversation.
You know, just like you know, I think it's part of like being at my age and being a millennial or whatever, just being like I need to be pushing harder and being more successful, and I'm just not achieving things I want to be achieving, despite everyone telling me I'm doing very well, which actually makes it worse because I'm like, I don't agree. So yeah, I think I almost cried yesterday, and I could have cried, it would have been just as valid. So I think what's more important there was that it's okay to feel awful and to go through it the most. Yeah. And if you cry from that, that's cool, but what's more important is allowing yourself those feelings.
Food for thought.
Food for thought.
Deeper one. How do you feel about your relationship with your father?
So this one's actually like a bit difficult because I don't have like a very strong relationship with my father. My parents divorced when I was very young. I was like 5 or 6 at the time. And so for as long as I can remember, like I haven't lived with my dad, and he hasn't been a salient figure. And then further than that, for like the past, I think 5 or 6 or 7, I don't even know, which is indicative of something in itself. He's been overseas, right? He lives in Guatemala. So we don't speak that much and we don't interact that much. And so there isn't much of a relationship there. And there's not much to talk about. And of course that ties into why I don't have like a lot of gendered thoughts about my manhood, manliness and masculinity, so many words. So I wouldn't say I have a bad relationship or a good relationship with him. There's not much of a relationship at all.
My relationship with my father would definitely, again, like I've mentioned earlier, whereas my mother's more of the typical fatherly figure in the household, where she's the breadwinner and she comes home and she's not really like the emotional supportive person. My father's definitely been the more emotionally expressive person in the house. When I first lost my virginity, he was the first person I told, was my father. Because I also knew he would understand and he would listen without compromise, and like my mother would have sort of like, you did what? And I think that is incredible, and I've definitely taken on like a lot of positive male aspects from that, and the fact that it is okay to be emotional, it is okay to wear your heart on your sleeve and to show people that you care, and to be like the nicest or caring person in the room, because that's always my father's sort of goal, I think. But to break it down further, and something that like you see constantly in other cycles, is that my father and my grandfather don't have a very strong relationship. There was a lot of tension in my father's household growing up between his mother, my grandmother, and his father, and that I think has caused like a disconnect. Not like completely dysfunctional, but something where they don't interact in a healthy space. And because of that, I think unintentionally, and perhaps his intention was to rectify that with me, but unintentionally, we now have a distance relationship. Because many of my grandfather's habits, my father has those same habits. And I think he blames himself or holds himself responsible for that and is consumed by that, and then is unable to then reach out to other people, and especially me. We've never had like a father-son weekend or father-son day. We don't have a hobby or activity to spend with each other, the thing that we do together. But it's rather just exist and coexist together. You finish off. In what ways do you express who you are to the world other than through the physical, which we said is like very difficult because we're both artists and create?
I think, I'm a photographer. So I take photos, but I haven't really taken photos as a form of expression in a long time, because I do it for work, so I've done it as a form of income more than a form of creative expression, which I'm trying to change.
Yeah.
But I think like just sort of language and because I suppose if it's not in the physical, you engage with the world in what, like a spiritual way and in a way of being, in a way of having values and ideas about things. So I guess, you know, I try and keep those good and evolving and critical. And then just our language is really important. The way we talk, the way we interrogate ourselves and other people, I think is very important and has been very valuable. Yeah,
early last year I also changed calling vests instead of wife beaters because it's a very important interaction to have. I also think it's the way you interact with people and not necessarily just your language, because my language always changes. My register can change and the dialogue that I use can change from person to person, but rather how I interact with them is the more important part. I think I generally attempt to give everyone a sign of respect or some sign of admiration of space, or a feeling that they are comfortable and safe in said space.
Right.
Yeah. I love this entire experience. It was fantastic. I learned and grew like a lot. I feel like we were very good on camera, but there was so much going on. And this is a message, or like the types of messages that this page provides, I would definitely subscribe to.
Hit the notification. Bam!